Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: we must not abandon Ukraine now. In power, Keating was a gift. Now, at 80, he's a tragedy. Most experts agree, China isn't about to invade Taiwan. Here's why China is sending pandas back to the United States. Putin's space nuke is so crazy, it's an opportunity. We must not abandon Ukraine now. Telegraph. The West must continue to support Ukraine in its conflict with Russia, according to a leader published in the Times. The article claims that it is not just a moral imperative to back Ukraine, but also a matter of self-interest and national security. The credibility of Western foreign policy commitments relies on the outcome of the Ukrainian conflict, and if the West were to abandon Ukraine, it would embolden other autocratic regimes and set a dangerous precedent. The article calls for European leaders to step up their support for Ukraine, especially as the US appears to be losing its appetite for involvement. In power, Keating was a gift. Now, at 80, he's a tragedy. The Sydney Morning Herald. Paul Keating, former Australian Prime Minister, has lamented that Australia has become too timid in recent years. In an interview marking his 80th birthday, Keating is responsible for many of Australia's economic reforms, such as the creation of the compulsory superannuation system and the opening up of Australia to market forces. These reforms helped to reverse the country's trajectory and led to a period of prosperity that lasted for 30 years without a recession. However, Keating's legacy is overshadowed by his recent support for the Chinese Communist Party and his criticism of Australia's relationship with the US. Keating has been accused of being an apologist for the Chinese government and of demanding that Australia appease Beijing. This has caused some to question his judgment and to argue that his legacy is at risk of being forgotten due to his controversial views in retirement. Most experts agree, China isn't about to invade Taiwan. Diplomat. Available forecasts consistently rate the risk of armed conflict between China and Taiwan as low, contradicting alarmist claims that a Chinese invasion of Taiwan is imminent, according to a report by the Swedish National China Center. Alarmist commentators overestimate the risk of war in three important ways: by overstating China's preparations for a Taiwan invasion, by incorrectly assuming China cannot accept Taiwan's democratic institutions, and by exaggerating the degree of internal change caused by President Xi Jinping. The report suggests that a mix of military and economic deterrence, as well as a responsibly managed China-US relationship, can effectively prevent conflict in the future. Here's why China is sending pandas back to the United States. Washington Post. China is set to continue its panda diplomacy by sending the animals to the US, despite worsening relations between the two countries. Last year, 3 pandas left the Smithsonian's National Zoo in Washington, leaving Atlanta Zoo as the sole remaining US panda owner. However, the San Diego Zoo has agreed a deal to bring the animals back to its facility. The Chinese Wildlife Conservation Association has signed agreements with the zoo and Madrid Zoo Aquarium in Spain to focus on the conservation of pandas, including preventing major diseases and protecting habitats. The Chinese government has said it expects the cooperation to promote people-to-people exchanges and enhance friendship between people. The announcement follows comments by President Xi Jinping during a visit to San Francisco in November, when he said China was ready to send pandas to the US to promote friendly ties. Putin's space nuke is so crazy, it's an opportunity. Bloomberg. Russia's President Vladimir Putin is planning to launch a nuclear device into one of the orbits where over 7,800 satellites are in space, according to American spies. The move is perplexing as there are already various ways to destroy satellites, such as kinetic kills, electromagnetic jamming, and direct ascent missiles. It is suggested that Putin's intention is to demonstrate that there is no order and to show his disregard for treaties and international laws, similar to his violation of the Multilateral Outer Space Treaty. By flouting the treaty, he would continue to show his disdain for the rules-based international order. The article suggests that Putin's move may provide an opportunity for US President Joe Biden and China's President Xi Jinping to cooperate on restraining Putin, as Xi would not want to lose all Chinese satellites to a Russian blast. This cooperation could lead to further collaboration on issues such as North Korea, carbon emissions, and regulating artificial intelligence. A Taiwan crisis is coming. Japan Times. China has been applying coercive pressure to Taiwan despite the Biden administration's attempts to ease tensions with China through dialogue. In late September, China sent warplanes and combat ships towards Taiwan while US and Chinese officials were holding talks in Bangkok. There are concerns that Chinese leader Xi Jinping will make a more overt push for reunification with Taiwan. Taiwan has never been part of the People's Republic of China and has remained outside Chinese control for the past 129 years. However, she has expressed his intention to enforce China's claim to the island. Vladimir Putin has Russia headed for economic ruin. The West can't lose its nerve now. The Sydney Morning Herald. Russia's economy is heading towards exhaustion, despite its apparent resilience and growth figures, according to an op-ed in The Telegraph. The author argues that Russia is effectively running a hot war economy, with defense spending tripling since the invasion of Ukraine and approaching 8% of national output. However, the author contends that Russia is losing the economic war, and is not winning the military war fast enough to compensate. The oil, gas and coal revenues that are still flowing are modest, and Russia is imposing a war surcharge on the coal industry and drawing up a list of 30 state companies for privatization. The Kremlin is also under pressure from the U.S. Treasury, which has targeted 50 tankers for violating oil production caps. The U.S. Treasury's actions have reportedly stranded 14 tankers carrying crude to India. The author concludes that the West should not lose its nerve and that it would be a monumental error to do so. U.S. officials combing leaked documents from Chinese tech firm for clues about Chinese hacking campaigns. CNN. U.S. officials have been studying leaked documents from Chinese tech firm Isun in an attempt to understand how Beijing uses the company in its alleged hacking operations. The documents offer some of the clearest evidence to date that China's security agencies outsource hacking to tech firms to target victims globally. The leaked data includes chat logs, employee records and details of Chinese government clients, and reveals that Isun has targeted a range of victims, including political groups, hospitals and universities. Isun's clients include the Chinese police, intelligence service and military. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the sixth dimension. Today, we have quite the eclectic mix of news stories to discuss. From the ongoing conflict in Ukraine to the perplexing panda diplomacy between China and the US. Let's dive right in. First up, we have an impassioned plea to the West to continue supporting Ukraine in its conflict with Russia. The article emphasizes that backing Ukraine is not just a moral imperative, but also a matter of self-interest and national security. It argues that abandoning Ukraine would set a dangerous precedent and embolden other autocratic regimes. So, let's not leave Ukraine hanging, okay? Next, we have former Australian Prime Minister Paul Keating lamenting that his country has become too timid in recent years. Keating, who is responsible for many of Australia's economic reforms, has been accused of being an apologist for the Chinese Communist Party. Some argue that his controversial views in retirement are overshadowing his legacy. It seems like Keating's outspoken nature has gotten him into a bit of a pickle. Moving on, we have a report debunking the alarmist claims that China is about to invade Taiwan. The report suggests that these claims overestimate the risk of war and misunderstand China's intentions. It emphasizes the importance of military and economic deterrence, as well as a responsibly managed China-US relationship, in preventing conflict. So, let's not jump to conclusions about an imminent invasion, shall we? Now, let's talk about something a little lighter: pandas. China is continuing its panda diplomacy by sending these adorable creatures to the US, despite worsening relations between the two countries. The Chinese government hopes that this cooperation will promote friendly ties between the people of both nations. Well, who can resist the charm of pandas? They have the power to bring people together, even in the most tense of times. Ah, Putin, always keeping us on our toes. According to American spies, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has some crazy plan to launch a nuclear device into space. Now, this move doesn't really make much sense, considering there are already plenty of ways to destroy satellites. It seems like Putin just wants to show his disregard for treaties and international laws. But hey, maybe this bizarre move will bring the US and China closer together in their efforts to restrain Putin. Who knows, maybe they'll even start collaborating on other issues. Stranger things have happened. Speaking of tensions, China has been applying coercive pressure to Taiwan, despite the Biden administration's attempts to ease tensions through dialogue. There are concerns that Chinese leader Xi Jinping will make a more overt push for reunification with Taiwan. But let's not forget, Taiwan has never been part of the People's Republic of China and has remained outside Chinese control for the past 129 years. So, let's keep an eye on this situation and hope for a peaceful resolution. Lastly, we have an op-ed claiming that Russia's economy is heading towards exhaustion. The author argues that Russia is losing the economic war, with defense spending skyrocketing and oil revenues becoming modest. The U.S. Treasury is also putting pressure on Russia, targeting tankers for violating oil production caps. It seems like the West shouldn't lose its nerve now and should continue to keep a watchful eye on Russia's economic situation. And there you have it, folks. A whirlwind tour of some of the most interesting news stories of the day. Now, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on these stories? Do you agree with the call to support Ukraine? Are you a fan of panda diplomacy? Let's start a discussion and see where it takes us. Remember, in the sixth dimension, there's always room for lively debate and an exchange of ideas. So, share your thoughts, ask your questions, and together, let's unravel the complexities of our world. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.